I was quite excited when this book was announced as a lead up to Jedi Survivor that would bridge the gap in between games, but overall I was a bit disappointed with how it played out. I'm well aware that part of this is likely due to the fact that I have yet to finish Jedi Fallen Order. I'm aware of how the general story goes, and I know who each person on the Mantis is, but I don't have the same connection or attachment to these characters and their story as I think most fans who played the game. I think that impacted my ability to enjoy the book a lot because I could recognize certain moments that focused on character development or were high stakes situations that put them at risk, but overall, I didn't find myself as engrossed or concerned as if it had been a more familiar character. Other than that though, I didn't find my lack of knowledge or time with the main characters negatively impacting my ability to enjoy or understand the book. The Haxian brood had quite a large presence throughout the story, and they felt like a group that I should have known. They sounded familiar, and I don't know if they were in the first game or not, but that did bug me a little at the beginning. The way they were brought up and mentioned didn't give a bunch of background knowledge on them. Rather, it felt like it was assuming that the audience knew who they were, or maybe that specific details didn't matter all that much to the story, but it was something I wish I was more familiar with coming into the book. On the other hand though, there were times when the book's story was very connected to that of the original game, and it sometimes felt like it was over-explaining certain elements. The book felt like it was written with the precaution in mind that the reader hadn't played the game already, but for me the problem came with inconsistency. Certain characters or elements from the game were explained in great detail, but others were just brought in without any explanation, so I struggled with the pacing that it would take some extra time to give background information. There were some fun connections to the game though, like certain moves, force powers, or even something as small as stims. It helped make the book feel connected to the game and a part of the same small world these characters are a part of. I also read this book by listening to the Audible version, so I have some notes on that too. Cal's voice initially sounded weird to me, but as the book went on, it was something I got used to. Some of the voices, specifically Marin and some of the newer characters, blended together at certain moments, which made it hard for me to completely understand certain scenes. However, some of the other characters, like Grease, sounded exactly like what I remember from the game, down to the pacing and specific mannerisms. A main thing fans expected coming into the book was to see how the crew of the Mantis split apart, since in the footage of Jedi Survivor, we've only ever seen Cal and Seer together, with no look at what Marin and Grease are up to at this point. Because of this expectation coming in, there were a lot of teases of the crew splitting and why it might happen, starting near the very beginning of the story, and consistently being brought up throughout. They all have their different beliefs in what it really is they're fighting for. Marin wants revenge for what happened to the Night Sisters, and Seer wants to rebuild the Jedi Order. And then Cal and Grease are more complicated when it comes to their reasons for fighting the Empire. But especially after they take on an Imperial target, these combating beliefs really come into light and create some tension among them. Confidence that fans would be speculating about the status of the Mantis crew was used as an advantage throughout to really build the tension and suspense, because it always felt like something big could happen. When you get books like this, it's easy to assume that the main characters will all make it out just fine, but with Grease and Marin, there were multiple moments when I was genuinely concerned that they might die or abandon the others, all because I assumed coming into this they would no longer be with the Mantis by the end. We didn't get all that much on Grease throughout the book, but Marin was a big focus on the story, and it often got into her head and fleshed out her more than what we saw from the game. The book jumped around from each member of the Mantis crew, so as a reader, we get to spend time in each of their heads and see things from their point of view, which is always something I enjoy in the book when it's done right. It helps add a lot more depth to the characters when we get to see their thoughts and feelings from within and not from an external point. For Marin, it began with a lot of things we already knew, but we gradually go deeper into her past and learn new information, or at least things that were new for me based on what I know from the game. I was a little confused with why she was struggling with her powers at the beginning of the book, but have eventually flowed nicely into her character's journey. Same with a small love triangle that develops between Marin and two other new characters. It began as feeling out of place, but I got used to it and it actually created some good moments for Marin down the line. I grew to care about her much more than I did coming into the book, but I can't say the same for the others. Seer feels sidelined for much of the story, and even for Cal, the first half didn't have all that much focus on him. We get some backstory on the fifth brother, but a lot of that was basic for Inquisitors and didn't do anything to make him unique. Something interesting that I noted while reading this was that the Organas and Alderaan were mentioned multiple times, and in places that it didn't really feel like they needed to be. So it's possible, however unlikely, that either that location or Bail Organa could play a role in the sequel game, which I think would be a really fun connection. The first game brought us back to Kashyyyk and Dathomir, so Alderaan could be a familiar location included in the sequel. We also got to go to Hosnian Prime for a bit of the story here, so that was a fun connection to the familiar game, even though the setting itself didn't make too much of a difference in the story. Let me know what you thought of Jedi Battle Scars in the comments below, or if you'll be picking it up after this. Remember to like the video, and subscribe for more in-depth reviews, and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. As always, thank you all for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.